Hi guys, today we're going to talk about section 3-2, which is solving systems of inequalities by graphing. So there's a couple of extra things you need to think about, such as, is my line solid? Is it dashed? Do I shade above? Do I shade below? Let's get started. So here for the first example, I'm going to notice that both of my inequalities are already in slope-intercept form, which is really great for me. So what I'm going to do is first decide solid or dashed by looking at my inequality symbol. So this one is going to be dashed. Feel free to look back at your notes on absolute value inequality if you don't recall if it's solid or dashed. Next, I'm going to decide, do I shade above or below? And greater than would be above. So one thing I want to recall about this, when we had absolute value, we would say we're going to shade above the vertex. In this instance, we don't have a vertex, so when we're deciding above or below, we're talking about above or below the y-intercept. So let's look at this first one. I'm going to graph my y-intercept to -4. And my slope is 2, so I'm going to go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Go as far as you can to the edge of the graph. And I noticed that my line is dashed, so let's make sure that we use a dashed line. Oh, I want to use the same color, which is green. And in this instance, I'm going to shade above the dashed line, or above the y-intercept of the dashed line. So that would be anything in this area. So all of that area there. All right, let's work on the next piece. The next one I'm going to do in red. So notice my symbol, it is a less than or equal to, so that would be solid and shaded below. So I'm going to go to 3, 1, 2, 3. My slope is -1/2, so down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. Go as far as you can to the edge of your graph. And this time I am going to have a solid line. Oh, I'm going to undo that just so I can have a line that is red. I'm not sure why that's happening, guys. It's a little freak out with technology. But in any case, I do need to notice that this one will be shaded below. So below what? Below this red line, or below the y-intercept of this red line. So down here. And I would technically shade this region as well. But for our final answer only occurs where the two shaded regions overlap, which would be here. And I'm going to put it blue to make it stand out. So our final answers, or our final solution set, only occurs in the double shaded region, which would be this region that I'm going to shade in blue. Okay? Why don't you try this next one on your own? So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can try this one. So if you look at this one, I always like when these interesting sort of things happen. On this one, the two lines were parallel because their slopes were the same. If they have the same slopes, then they're parallel. So because of that, I noticed something very interesting happened. I shaded above the green one and below the red one, so the two colors never actually overlapped, meaning that there are no solutions to this graph. If it had happened in a way to such that the colors intersected in the middle, maybe my signs were reversed, then I would have solutions in the middle. All right. We're going to try a word problem next, so it's a little bit interesting. You might need to pause the video to write the problem down. So here it is. We're talking about Chelsea. She has some final exams in 3 classes, calculus, physics, and history. And she has up to 15 hours to study for the exams. So up to 15 hours to study for the exams. She plans to study history for 5 hours. She needs to spend at least 4 hours studying for calculus, but over 8 is too much. So let's write a little bit of this down. Let's see. So for calculus, she needs to study at least 4 hours, but over 8 is too much. So at least, whenever I see at least, I know I'm studying between 4 and 8. I'm just going to just say X represents the hours of calculus. So if she's studying for calculus at least 4 hours, but 8 is too much, so we're going to do less than 8. So between 4 and 8. And then we need to talk about, she hopes to study between 2 and 5 hours for physics. So let's talk about Y being physics. So she needs to study between 2 and 4 hours. So between could be equal to. So the other thing I need to account for is history. So history was a standard 5 hours. So if she has a total of 15 hours that she can study minus the 5 hours for history, then she's left with 10 hours for calculus and physics. So the number of hours for calculus and the number of hours of physics that she studies has to be less than or equal to 10. So let's see how all of this plays out. First, let's talk about graphing the lines for calculus. So for calculus, I'm working with that in my green color here. I want to scroll up to the graph. So calculus is between 4 and 8 hours. So X is between 4 and 8. So let's go ahead and label our axes. So the X-axis would represent calculus, the number of hours of calculus, and that's between 4 and 8. So 4 between 4 and 8. And we actually said that it had to be less than those 8 hours. So let's see. So if we're just talking about calculus, we would be somewhere in between here. So we can shade, but I want to hold off on the shading for just a minute to kind of narrow it down a little bit. Let's next look at our physics. Physics is between 2 and 4 hours, and I did that one in pink. Let's label this at physics, pink for physics. And that's going to be along my y-axis between 2 and 4 hours. So let's see. Between 2 was it 2 and 4? Yeah, 2 and 4. Two hours and 4 hours. So we narrowed our shading a little bit. It's now, not only is it between the green lines, but it's also between the green and the pink. But we also talked about one other thing, the total hours studied, which is over here written in red. The total hours of calculus and physics together. We kind of took history out of the equation by subtracting 5 from the beginning. So let's see what we're left with. Y is less than or equal to negative x plus 10. So let's go ahead and graph that one in red. So I'm going to go 10. did say less than or equal to, so this will be a solid line. I'm just trying to get some points here. So solid line, and that's for the red one. All right, so let's talk about our shading. I'm going to shade in yellow this time. We're shading between the two green lines, between the two pink lines, and then most definitely it's less than the red line. So this little area here will represent the hours that Chelsea is willing to study on physics and calculus. So what does that mean? Let's take an example point. So she could study 5 hours on calculus and 3 hours on physics, and plus the 5 hours on history. The one thing I would want to look at is if it falls on a solid line here. She could study 6 hours of calculus and 4 hours of physics, or she could study like anything in between. That's why we have this whole shaded region as part of our answers. So we will definitely talk about this one a little bit more in class, but I just wanted to give you the basics of that first. And let's look at one more example. This last one, we're going to find the coordinates of the vertices of this triangle that's formed. So what I'm going to do first is get all three of these into slope. So the question is asking us to find the coordinates of the vertices of the triangle formed by this equation. So first, let's go ahead and graph them. 2x plus 1, so I'm going to 1. And my slope is 2, so up 2 and right 1. Down 2 and left 1. I would want to decide if this is solid or dashed, and it's going to be solid. Let's see, like that. All right, next line I'm going to do in pink. So I'm going to think about all those questions. Am I going to shade above or below? The green one will be below, but I'm going to just hang on until I graph all three to shade it. So I'm going to do below. So I'm going to go to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And my slope is negative x, so down 1. Sorry, my slope is negative 1. Down 1, right 1. And up and left. So let's go ahead and do that one solid. So it looks like I actually found one of the vertices, and it's going to be shaded below. So far we're looking at this region here, and then let's go ahead and finish up with that blue graph. I'm going to start at 1 again, and my slope is negative 1/4, so down 1, right 4. And because I know what I'm looking for, which is the edges or the vertices of this triangle, I'm not going to go ahead and extend that all the way. I'm going to just kind of do this. I missed. Let's try it again. I'm going to go here. All right, that's a little better. So my shaded region would occur above the blue, but below the green and below the pink. So looks like right here. And with that in mind, the question is, what are the coordinates of my vertices? So 1, 2, 3. So the first one is 0, 1. The second one is 1, 3. And the third one is 4, 0. All right, thanks a lot, guys.